Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. The Clean Air Act is one of the most effective public health laws in American history. The original 1963 version, initiated by President Kennedy and signed into law by President Johnson, empowered the United States Public Health Service to address air pollution 6 years before the creation of the EPA. The Clean Air Act's success comes from its requirement to use science to protect public health and welfare. The Clean Power Plan and the new ozone standard are both cases of the EPA acting to protect public health and welfare from proven hazards. The scientific community has shown the connection between ozone and respiratory health problems for decades and has called for an ozone standard of 60 parts per billion since 2006. Ground-level ozone and smog threaten the health of kids and other cardiovascular compromised people. It even has negative impacts on healthy adults, agriculture, and wildlife. And each time science advisory boards have been asked to review the latest research on ozone, they find a growing body of evidence of its health hazards. Then we have the Clean Power Plan, our first big step towards reducing U.S. carbon pollution. The plan will help protect the public from the health impacts of climate change and other pollutants like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides that will also be reduced as a result. Earlier this summer, the UK's top medical journal, The Lancet, published a major health study that identified climate change as the most significant global health threat of the 21st century and offered up a number of prescriptions of ways to reduce carbon pollution and shift to cleaner sources of energy. The Clean Power Plan is one way that we can follow the doctor's orders. The science is clear about the ozone, and it's clear about carbon pollution. These critical Clean Air Act measures we are discussing today will promote health and stimulate our economy. Before the 2008 ozone standard was finalized, we heard that this standard would cripple the economy, but this was just not true in Massachusetts. Both air quality and GDP increased even as the ozone standard tightened. I'm expecting that this trend will continue in Massachusetts as we work to meet the new ozone standard. Do you believe that other states will also experience economic growth while solving their pollution problems?
Senator, we've seen nothing to suggest that improving air quality doesn't improve the economy as it improves public health.
I look forward to the long-awaited ozone standard that will improve life and productivity of families impacted by respiratory health problems. I am concerned, however, that the standard will stop short of providing the required protections. A 70 parts per billion ozone standard would still lead to hundreds of thousands of asthma attacks and thousands of preventable deaths each year. Once the ozone rule is finalized, do you believe that an adequate margin of safety, which is required by the Clean Air Act, will be achieved?
That is our job, Senator, to recommend and for the Administrator to make a decision that protects the public health with an adequate margin of safety, and I don't believe she would sign a rule if she didn't feel that that's what she was signing.
Many studies have shown that low-income individuals have the least ability to protect themselves from the effects of climate change, including air quality, sea level rise, and flooding, water scarcity, food prices, and changing economies. The Clean Air Plan does include programs for low-income families. Do you think the plan will have a net benefit for those poor families?
We think both the Clean Power Plan and the ozone standard are particularly important to protect vulnerable, low-income and other populations that are particularly affected by these issues.
And doesn't the history of the Clean Air Act and environmental regulation show that it does lead to innovation, that new emissions technologies emerge that solve the problem at a much less expensive cost than had ever been anticipated, even by the experts?
That's absolutely true, Senator.
Yeah, so we've seen that in the automotive sector. We've seen it in other sectors, and I think it's highly likely to continue in this sector as well. And to those who wonder whether or not a goal, which is not established for Nebraska or any other state, might be met, let's just look at the facts. Just in America, in 2015 and 16, we're going to double the total amount of solar. it's going from 20,000 to 40,000 total installed solar capacity. And why is that? It's because the price is collapsing. The same thing is true on the wind side. We're adding 28,000 new megawatts of wind just in this 2-year period. And between wind and solar, by the end of 2016, we're going to have 133,000 megawatts of wind and solar installed in the United States, largely because of the advance in technology and the collapse in price. So I think people should be optimistic that each of the states, with the great flexibility you're providing, will be able to meet this standard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.